So picture this. It's 1905, and you're sitting in this sterile, very quiet room across from a doctor.
Sounds intimidating already.
Right. And you recently stole 100 francs from your employer.
Okay.
And you know for a fact that you are the prime suspect.
Hmm.
But the doctor, he doesn't interrogate you. He doesn't yell. He doesn't demand a confession.
He just sits there.
Yeah, he just pulls out this ticking stopwatch and asks you to play a really simple, rapid-fire word association game.
Which is such a wild tactic.
It really is.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, by the way. For as long as human beings have been keeping secrets, we have been completely obsessed with finding a way to crack them open.
Oh, absolutely.
And for this deep dive, we are looking at this foundational early forensic psychology text that details that exact scenario I just described. It's an exploration of something they call the association experiment.
Which is fascinating.
Yeah. So our goal today is to really understand how these early psychologists attempted to basically bypass the conscious mind. We're going to look at why our deepest secrets literally slow down our neurological processing, and how this incredibly brilliant method of lie detection also carried this really dangerous, almost tragic flaw.
Yeah, and the history of this tool is actually quite revealing because, well, it was never actually intended for criminal investigations in the first place.
Wait, really? It wasn't designed for criminals?
No, not at all. If we look at the origins, this began purely in the realm of academic theory. So you had researchers, guys like Wilhelm Wundt and Francis Galton, and they were using these very simple word association games just to map out the baseline architecture of a healthy mind.
Okay, so just basic research.
Exactly. They simply wanted to see how ideas connect logically, without any stress or high stakes attached to it.
They were just trying to establish the baseline.
Right.
Like, I say dog, you say cat. I say up, you say down.
Yeah, right.
Just measuring the standard speed of human thought.
Yeah, it was purely laboratory science. But the concept took a really dramatic turn when psychiatrists, specifically figures like Kraepelin and Bleuler, began applying this exact same baseline experiment to their psychiatric patients.
Oh, interesting.
And they noticed something fascinating. The specific words these patients chose and, the hesitations in their voices, it wasn't just random neurological noise or like a poor vocabulary.
It meant something more.
Right. They realized this association experiment could actually act as a psychological X-ray.
An X-ray, I like that.
Yeah, it was revealing these hidden, highly charged emotional clusters that were just lurking in the unconscious mind. And they began to call these clusters complexes.
Complexes. Okay, I really want to understand the mechanics of this X-ray, because this whole complex concept, it really seems to be the engine for the entire experiment.
Oh, it is. 100%.
So how does a simple word game force a hidden complex out into the open?
Well, the mechanism really relies on overwhelming the conscious mind's ability to filter itself. So the experimenter sits across from the subject and calls out a single word. They call that the stimulus word.
Okay.
And the subject's only job is to reply as quickly as humanly possible with the very first word that pops into their head.
Right. No thinking, just talking.
Exactly. That reply is the reaction. But what the psychiatrists discovered is that our minds are constantly navigating what they termed a feeling-toned complex of ideas.
A feeling-toned complex. That implies we aren't just talking about dry facts here, like not the capital of France or some math equation.
No, not at all. A complex is a cluster of memories, thoughts, and images that are all glued together by a really powerful emotion.
Okay, like what kind of emotion?
Well, it could be a traumatic event, right? Or a passionate romance, a hidden crime, or even just a deep-seated anxiety.
Got it.
And when a stimulus word accidentally brushes up against one of these complexes, the subject doesn't just react with a standard logical word anymore.
Their brain sort of short circuits.
Yeah, exactly. Their reaction is hijacked or constellated, to use the clinical term, by that hidden emotional cluster.
It almost sounds like a mental pothole.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like if I am driving along in a completely normal, boring conversation, just cruising at 50 miles an hour, and suddenly you say a word that hits my hidden complex, the whole car violently shudders.
Yes.
I might stumble over my words, or my train of thought completely derails.
And the key thing is that shudder is measurable. The context literally disrupts the smooth, expected operation of the conscious mind.
But, okay, I'm putting myself in the shoes of a suspect here.
Okay.
If I know I have a dark secret that I desperately want to keep hidden, and you throw a word at me that triggers my secret, I feel like I would just force myself to say a random innocent word.
Right, to cover it up.
Yeah, like if you say stolen, I'll just quickly say apple or chair and just pretend everything is fine. Why wouldn't that work?
Well, criminals certainly try that approach. But the source text outlines 3 scientific indicators that betray a hidden complex, even when the subject is actively trying to suppress it.
Really? Even if they try to hide it?
Yeah, because the cognitive effort required to hide the secret actually creates measurable
A
anomalies.
cover-up is worse than the crime.
Exactly. So the first indicator they look for is unusual content. Sometimes the emotional pull of the complex is so overwhelming that it simply overrides common sense and logical association.
So the brain basically just throws logic out the window because it's too distracted by the emotion.
Yes, and the text provides a really great example of this. They tested this elegant young man who was given the stimulus words goat, potato, and cow.
Okay, pretty standard farm words.
Right. But for every single one of those words, his reaction was the word agriculture.
Wait, agriculture?
Ah,
For goat. That is a remarkably strange, robotic way to respond to goat.
it really is.
You'd expect horns or milk or just animal?
Right. But he defaulted to agriculture because he was a first-term agriculture student. Yeah. His entire world, his daily routine, his anxieties, they were all totally consumed by his studies. It's his dominant complex at that time.
That makes so much sense.
His associative pathways were so heavily fortified around his studies that all the other normal linguistic roads were just closed off.
Wow.
And similarly, the text notes that if a marriageable young woman responds to the word to kiss with the phrase sister's kiss,
Oh, wow, yeah.
you can infer a complex regarding romance and specifically a conscious desire to downplay it.
Right, like she's being overly defensive. So the content itself becomes a red flag because it's too specific or too guarded. But what if the suspect is smart enough to give a normal word? Like, what's the second indicator?
The second tell is prolonged reaction time.
Ah, the stopwatch.
Yes, the stopwatch. The experimenters weren't just sitting there listening to the words, they were timing the gap between the stimulus and the reaction with a stopwatch accurate to 1/5 of a second.
That is incredibly precise for 1905.
It is. Now, a normal unburdened reaction might take, say, 1.2 to 1.8 seconds. But when a word hits a complex, the reaction time spikes to 3, 4, or even 5 seconds.
Wait, a 5-second pause in a rapid-fire word game?
Yeah.
That is an absolute eternity.
It's a massive red flag.
Why does it take so much longer?
Well, it comes down to cognitive load. In that microscopic window of time, the unconscious mind has thrown up a dangerous, emotionally charged word related to the secret.
Right.
The conscious mind realizes the danger, slams on the brakes, shoves that dangerous word back down, and then violently scrambles to find an innocent replacement word like your example of apple.
Oh, man.
That entire filtering and substitution process requires intense processing power, and it takes physical time. The hesitation is the absolute proof that filtering is happening.
Wow. So the very act of trying to trick the test by finding a fake word is the exact mechanism that proves you're hiding something.
Exactly.
You physically cannot think fast enough to hide the delay.
You can't. And the mental strain of that whole cover-up process leads directly to the third indicator, which is incorrect reproduction.
Which is the memory failure part, right?
Yes. So after the initial 100-word test is totally completed, the experimenter goes back and asks the subject to simply repeat the answers they gave the first time.
Just from memory.
Right. And on the normal, unburdened words, subjects easily remember what they said. But on the words that hit a complex, they frequently suffer from short-term amnesia.
That is why.
They literally cannot recall the innocent replacement word they used just minutes prior.
I really want to understand the biology of that. Like, why does the memory just evaporate? Is the brain so flooded with panic during that specific word that it basically fails to hit the record button?
That is essentially it, yeah. The intense emotional affect completely deranges the memory encoding process.
Right.
The brain is so consumed with the threat of exposure and just so fatigued by the effort of suppressing the dangerous word that the innocent line never actually gets properly committed to short-term memory.
It's too busy surviving to remember.
Right, so the X-ray reveals this aggregate picture of unusual answers, ticking delays, and then sudden amnesia.
Okay, I'm trying to picture taking this out of the sterile laboratory setting. Because, I mean, all of this makes perfect sense in theory, but how does it hold up when a real crime has actually been committed and someone's freedom is actively on the line?
That is the big question.
Because our sources detail this real-life case study from 1905 that puts this exact theory to the test.
Yeah, and the stakes in this case study were incredibly high, so it provides a perfect window into the practical application of the tool.
Let's set the scene for us.
So we have this elderly gentleman who comes to a doctor in a state of deep agitation. He lives with an 18-year-old protege, and over the previous weeks, money has just been vanishing from a locked drawer in a chest.
Okay.
He knows for a fact that at least 100 francs are gone. Now, he strongly suspects the 18-year-old, but he wants to handle the matter quietly to avoid a public scandal.
Right. Keep the police out of it if possible.
Exactly. So his initial request is actually for the doctor to hypnotize the boy to extract a confession.
Which is just so funny to me. It's amazing how people viewed psychology back then, treating hypnosis like this magical truth serum.
Right, like waving a pocket watch solves crimes.
Yeah. But the doctor refuses to do that, right?
He does. He tells the gentleman that hypnosis is technically difficult and honestly usually useless in these scenarios. Instead, he decides to ambush the boy using the association experiment.
Ah, the trap is set.
So he has the guardian send the boy over under the guise of a routine medical consultation for some minor nervous complaints.
So the boy has absolutely no idea he is walking into an interrogation.
Not at all.
That is brutal.
And the doctor prepares this highly customized list of 100 words. He takes 63 completely irrelevant, boring words, and he uses them as camouflage for 37 critical words.
The landmines.
Right. And these critical words are directly tied to the crime scene. So words like drawer, master key, police, sister, and to steal.
It's a psychological minefield. The boy thinks he's taking a medical test, but every third or fourth word is a direct strike on his potential guilt.
Exactly.
So what does the raw data of a guilty mind actually look like when forced through this minefield?
Well, the trap is sprung almost immediately. Early in the test, the doctor uses the critical phrase to give a present.
Okay, why that phrase?
He chose this because the boy had recently bought his sister presents, potentially using the stolen money.
Oh, that is sneaky.
Yeah. So the boy tries to offer the word generous, but his brain stumbles under the cognitive load, and the result is a physical slip of the tongue. He stutters out generous.
Oof.
And during the reproduction phase later, his memory of this moment is totally incorrect.
He hit the first pothole and the car shuddered.
And the damage just compounds as the test goes on.
Yeah.
When the doctor says the word thief, the boy completely freezes.
Oh, man.
The stopwatch ticks for an agonizing 4.6 seconds before the boy finally blurts out the word burglar.
4.6 seconds. He was probably battling 5 different dangerous words in his head before finally settling on burglar.
Oh, no doubt.
But surely the panic subsides once he gets the word out and moves on to the next one, right?
Well, see, that assumes the brain can reset instantly, but it can't. And this introduces a really crucial psychological concept from the text called perseveration.
Perseveration. Okay, what is that?
Basically, the emotional shock of a critical word is sometimes so intense that the paralysis bleeds over into the subsequent word, even if that next word is completely innocent.
Wait, I need to wrap my head around that. Why would an innocent word trigger a delay?
Well, think of the unconscious mind as a computer processor. When the doctor says the word burglary, the boy manages to respond with theft in 1.8 seconds.
Okay, pretty fast.
But the emotional charge of burglary has totally triggered his fight-or-flight response. His amygdala is firing. His mental processor is maxed out dealing with the sheer terror of that concept.
He's panicking internally.
Right, so when the doctor reads the very next word on the list, which happens to be the completely innocent word to cook, the boy's conscious mind is essentially locked out. He has zero processing power left to give.
Oh, wow. And what does he say to the word to cook?
The text just marks his response with a series of dashes.
No way.
He says nothing. He completely fails to react. The reverberations of the complex have basically shut down his basic cognitive functions.
His guilt is physically paralyzing his speech. And the doctor's just sitting there with the stopwatch watching this happen over and over again.
Yeah, the doctor is watching the data, but he is also watching the boy's physical demeanor begin to crumble.
The body language.
Exactly. At the critical points, the boy grows increasingly restless. He begins offering these embarrassed titters, shifting his chair back and forth, rubbing his hands together, and hiding them in his pocket.
The nervous energy has to go somewhere.
Right. These physical symptoms are the external pressure valves for the internal complex detonating.
So the test concludes. The doctor reviews the data, the stutters, the massive delays, the blank spots where the memory failed. And he just looks at the 18-year-old and simply states, "You are the thief."
Which is quite a moment. The boy turns pale and initially attempts to protest his innocence. But the doctor doesn't argue with him?
He doesn't have to.
No. He simply lays out the statistical anomalies. He shows the boy the mathematical proof of his own hesitations.
Here is the data.
Right. And confronted with the raw data of his own mind, the boy just breaks down in tears and offers a full confession.
It's a phenomenal story. The psychological X-ray performed absolutely flawlessly and caught the culprit.
It did.
But I have to say, I am hung up on an objection raised in the text by another prominent psychologist, William Stern.
Ah, Stern's objection, yes.
Because if I try to put myself in the shoes of someone who is entirely innocent, I'm not sure this test works the way it's supposed to.
How do you mean?
Well, if you pull me into a room, accuse me of a crime, and start throwing words like police and jail at me, my heart is going to pound. I'm going to hesitate. Not because I stole anything, but because I am totally terrified of being framed.
And Stern's objection strikes at the absolute core of the experiment's vulnerability.
It's a big flaw.
It is. The test is incredibly accurate at measuring the presence of an emotional complex. But the stopwatch cannot distinguish which complex is triggering the delay.
Right.
Is the 5-second hesitation caused by the complex of I stole the money? Or is it caused by the complex of I am an innocent person terrified of going to prison?
It's the classic cookie jar problem.
Exactly.
If someone corners you and asks, "Did you eat the last cookie?"
Yeah.
You might blush furiously because you are guilty, but you might also blush furiously simply because you hate confrontation and you despise being accused of things you didn't do.
Yes, the physical symptom, the blush, looks absolutely identical to the observer.
So how on earth did the doctor address that vulnerability?
Well, he had to test Stern's theory directly, so he set up a rigorous control group.
Oh.
He took the exact same 100-word list he used on the thief, and he administered it to 2 highly educated, completely innocent young men to establish a baseline of how an innocent mind handles those specific words.
Okay, who were these control subjects?
The first was termed the informed subject. He knew all the details of the theft case, he understood the mechanics of the association experiment, and he knew he was simply acting as a scientific baseline.
Okay, so he's totally in on it.
Right. And the second subject was the uninvolved. He had absolutely no knowledge of the test's purpose, no knowledge of the theft, and was entirely clueless about the stakes.
Okay, so logically, if the test is a perfect lie detector, both of these innocent men should breeze right through the critical words.
That's the theory.
They didn't steal the money, so words like drawer and key shouldn't trigger any mental potholes.
That was the expectation, but the results were genuinely shocking.
Really?
Yeah, the innocent controls failed miserably. Let's examine the uninvolved subject. When he encountered critical words like drawer and to lock up, his reaction times spiked dramatically. He exhibited massive complex symptoms.
But he didn't steal the 100 francs. What complex was he hitting?
So the doctor interviewed him afterward and discovered that the uninvolved subject was actually enduring a period of severe personal distress.
Oh, interesting.
He had recently lost his job, he was highly anxious about his plummeting social status, and he was currently dependent on someone else's favor just to survive.
Oh, wow.
So when he heard the words drawer and to lock up, his brain did not think of a stolen 100 francs.
Obviously not.
His brain was triggered into a spiral of existential dread about his locked-up potential, his lack of resources, and his bleak future.
That is so sad.
His unrelated personal anxiety completely hijacked the criminal test.
But that means if he had been an actual suspect in the case, the stopwatch would have convicted him.
Absolutely.
He looked just as guilty on paper. And what about the informed subject? Because he knew how the test worked.
Even the informed subject stumbled heavily on the words watch and wood.
Okay, and again, I'm assuming he had not stolen a wooden watch.
No, he had not. He was actually engaged to be married.
Okay.
And his dominant, all-consuming stress at that moment was the fact that he and his fiancée were struggling to buy new furniture for their future home, and money was incredibly tight.
Are you kidding me?
No. The word wood bypassed any thought of the crime and slammed directly into his furniture and fiancé complex, causing his reaction time to completely plummet.
Okay, so the machine isn't a lie detector at all.
Not at all.
It's just a mirror that reflects whatever specific anxiety you happen to be carrying around that day. I mean, the word would means a dozen different things to a dozen different people.
Exactly. The stimulus words possess a vast multiplicity of meanings. You throw a word into the unconscious mind, and you have literally no control over whether it strikes the concrete memory of a crime scene or a symbolic, totally unrelated personal fear.
See, this leaves me with a huge unanswered question, though.
Okay, what is it?
If the system is this fragile, If the innocent guys are failing the test because they are stressed about job hunting and buying furniture, how could the doctor definitively look the 18-year-old in the eye and call him a thief?
Ah.
Was he just guessing and getting lucky?
It's a great question, but no, he wasn't guessing. The doctor clarifies that the difference between the guilty boy and the innocent controls was not qualitative.
Meaning what?
It wasn't a matter of whether they had complexes, because everyone does. The difference was entirely quantitative.
Oh, the numbers.
Yes, it was the sheer mathematical weight and density of the errors.
So everyone stumbled, but the thief stated it was just catastrophically worse.
Exactly. Let's look at the hard numbers regarding the reproduction test. You know, the memory failure.
Okay.
The informed subject forgot his answers on 80% of the critical words. The uninvolved subject forgot 71%.
I mean, those are still incredibly high failure rates for completely innocent people.
They are. But the 18-year-old thief made memory reproduction errors on a staggering 90% of the critical and post-critical words.
Wow.
Furthermore, when the doctor actually graphed out the reaction times, the thief's delays on the words immediately following the critical words, that perseveration effect we discussed earlier, those were drastically higher than his own baseline and vastly higher than the innocent controls.
Okay, so it was a much more intense reaction.
The innocent subjects had isolated spikes in their data, right? Like little blips. But the thief experienced a sustained, localized earthquake across the entire sequence of crime-related words.
Ah, I see.
It was the aggregate pattern that convicted him, not just one isolated bad reaction.
Okay, that makes sense. But still, even with that mathematical confidence, relying on this to put someone in prison feels incredibly dangerous.
Oh, the author of the text agrees completely. In fact, he issues a very strict, somber clinical warning about this.
Huh?
He insists that this association experiment cannot be blindly trusted in criminal law. He compares it directly to Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis, stating that utilizing this tool requires immense clinical experience.
It's not for amateurs?
Exactly. You cannot simply read the stopwatch. You have to be an expert in reading what he calls the imponderables of human contact.
The imponderables of human contact. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
That basically means reading the room, right? Reading the facial expressions, the embarrassed laughs, the subtle shifting in the chair.
Yes, it requires an investigator who intimately understands the delicate, highly specialized nuances of human psychopathology.
Right.
If you just hand a stopwatch to an amateur magistrate who just wants a quick conviction, they will inevitably misinterpret the data. They'll mistake general anxiety for criminal guilt, and they'll cause a tragic miscarriage of justice.
Man. You know, as we wrap up this deep dive, it really strikes me how relevant this century-old experiment remains today.
It really does.
I mean, we obviously don't use 1/5-second stopwatches in our daily conversations, but this phenomenon of the complex is happening around us constantly.
Oh, absolutely.
We are navigating each other's hidden emotional clusters every single day.
We see the imponderables of human contact play out in literally every interaction.
Yeah. Whenever a colleague at work hesitates just a beat too long before answering a simple question about a project, or whenever a friend conveniently forgets the topic of a conversation that was making them uncomfortable, you are witnessing complex constellation in real time.
Right before your eyes.
Our secrets, our anxieties, our hidden embarrassments, they dictate our behavior, they alter our vocabulary, and they cause us to stumble, even when we think we are playing it perfectly cool.
It's so true. It really challenges the very concept of our self-control.
It does.
Which actually raises a final thought for you to mull over as we end our deep dive today.
Oh, that's it.
Well, if our unconscious complexes possess the raw power to hijack our reaction times, alter our vocabulary, and literally erase our short-term memory against our will, how much of what we say every single day is actually a conscious choice? And how much is just our complexes doing the talking for us?